I'm sure you'll be fine. So,
Yes.
Jamie Bullock, over to you.
Yes, so thank you, Louis and Chris, for inviting me, and I apologise for the slight confusion, as I've not managed to test this before the session, and my train was very delayed. I had a very bad user experience on my journey, which kind of chimed in nicely with the theme of the talk. My name's Jamie Bullock. I'm interested in the creative applications of music technology, and I'm particularly interested in ways in which we can make the creative process easier, more efficient, more enjoyable for musicians, and to enable musicians really to think in music when they're using technology, and not to have to adapt to the kind of language or the encoding of the actual technology itself. I'm the co-founder of a lab called Integra Lab at Birmingham Conservatoire. We make a piece of software called Integra Live, which is a piece of software which aims to be as easy as possible, make it as easy as possible for musicians to do live electronic music. It does all sorts of interesting things like live audio processing, real-time control and that sort of stuff. That's our main project. I'm also interested in audio feature extraction, and some of you might possibly know me for that work. And really my take on that is that I'm interested in audio feature extraction in live performance, so as a means of controlling audio processing and a sort of a modality of interaction, or a modality of interactivity between the performer and the actual processing systems. So I'm interested in making software for musicians. That's important because I think it's important when we make software to understand who it's going to be for. And I'm increasingly interested in this idea of user experience, because I think it's now becoming, well, I've started to realise through the process of developing Integra Live and the other software that I make, that it's difficult to achieve the sort of goals that we're looking to achieve, sort of seamless creativity for artists and so on, without considering the broader picture of user experience. So if we just take the software in isolation, I think it's quite difficult for us to achieve our actual research goals. So Don Norman is often cited as being the originator of this term user experience, and he's got lots of excellent resources online. If you just Google Don Norman, loads of really interesting stuff comes up. He worked at Apple for a while, and he defines user experience as: user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services and products. For us as academic researchers, we're mainly not dealing with commercial products, but I think the concepts still apply, and they can be adapted to what we're doing. So this gives an idea of what user experience actually is in a kind of neat little diagram. User experience is holistic, so it takes into account the entire journey that a user or a customer goes through from when they very first think about the task that they want to embark on to actually using the product and doing whatever it is that they need to do. So user experience isn't just user interface, it's everything, right from when they first try and find your product or find your software. So I'll just take a quick show of hands. How many of you who are working on software-based projects actually work with designers in some way? Okay, so a small handful of people. And how many of you actually would consider yourself to be a designer? Okay, so a couple of people. So if my guess would be, and this is totally unscientific, and I'm going to say lots of unscientific things in this presentation, partly because I'm not a scientist, but I would guess that the majority of people working in academia doing software-based projects aren't working with designers, and also don't consider themselves to be designers. So let's assume that you fall into that demographic. So you're not doing any visual design work on your product, or you're not getting someone to help you do it. You might be thinking about information architecture, but maybe not explicitly. And you probably aren't spending that much time doing interaction design either. Okay, how many people actually do usability testing? Yeah, show of hands. So, quite a lot of people actually. Okay, leave your hand up if you do sort of formal lab-based usability tests. Okay, so more than I thought. But, well, I'd say at least half of you, and not that this room's in any way representative of everybody who's doing academic software. I suspect that there's actually a higher percentage of people here doing user testing than is the rule. But let's say that you're not doing that, and you're not doing user research, and you probably don't have a strategy for how you're going to actually market your products online. So, say we don't do any of those things, this is what we end up with. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. Okay, you're putting your software out on the web or releasing it in some way for end users to use, and you haven't spent any time designing the interface, you haven't tested it with any end users, you haven't done the usability tests, and you haven't thought about how you're going to deliver it. So, in the rest of the talk, I'm going to think about two different types of software. The software that you would make for yourself, for your own projects, and this is typical. This is a Max patch, and this is typical of the sort of software that we get sent at Birmingham Conservatoire when we perform a musical work. So if we do a piece with live electronics, the publishers will send us something like this. They'll send us a Max file. If we're lucky, we can actually open the file. It's quite often we won't even be able to open the file. We're sitting in old version, old file format, or on a floppy disk or something. If we're lucky, we can actually open the file. If we're even luckier, we can open the file and it works. Okay, and if we're really super lucky, we can access the file, we can open it, it works, and we can use it. Okay, that doesn't happen very often. More often than not, what we have to do is actually do some work, some initial work to bring the file up to date, and then more work actually making it work, and then maybe some more tweaks actually making it work for the particular concert we're doing. Okay, so this is what I would call the software. I mean, if you hide all the horrible lines and patch codes and things, which you can do in Max, the user interface still isn't particularly good. You can see you've got all sorts of sliders and things all over the place and various waveforms, and it's confusing even without that. And that's okay if you're writing software for your own use. So if you're writing your own MATLAB scripts or your own Python code, your own apps, your own Max patches, and you're the only person who's going to use them, then doing stuff like that is all right because you know the strengths and weaknesses of the system and you can work around it. If you're going to give the software to someone else to use, then you need to have some other considerations in your mind. So if you're writing software for other people, they're going to have certain expectations. Okay, so the sort of expectations they would have are that the software might have a website or a web page you can go to find information about it. They'll expect that it'll be possible, or at least easy to download, easy to install, that it'll work, it'll be efficient, they'll be able to find some sort of support somewhere and help in using it, there'll be some documentation, it'll be easy to update, the user interface will be easy to use, and going a bit further than that, they might actually hope that the software would be enjoyable to use. And I'm sure you can think of some others that apply to your specific domain. So we're not just thinking about making software for people, we're thinking about providing an experience for our end users, and in my case that's musicians. If you produce something like that, the result is going to be something along those lines. That's the internal, that's an externalization of the internal frustration. And the thing is nobody wants to use software. No one gets up in the morning and thinks, I really want to use some software today. I really can't wait to use Pro Tools. I really can't wait to use Microsoft Word. Okay, people don't want to use software. That's not a goal. People want to do a task. They want to make some music. They want to compose. They want to communicate with their friends. Okay? So you need to think about this. We all need to think about this when we make software. You need to imagine the user not really wanting to use it. That needs to be your starting point. What do users actually want? Well, if they're a musician, they want to feel like Jimi Hendrix does in this picture. He's lost in the moment. He's in some sort of, euphoric state of connection with his instrument, and he's got his eyes closed, as if music's just emanating through his fingers and out of the speakers. Beethoven, lost in thought, looking past the artist who's painting him and writing down spontaneously as the musical ideas come into his head. Paul McCartney in the studio, the master at the mixing console. Okay, this is how people want to feel when they're making music. They don't want to be figuring out why something's not working, or why they haven't got the latest version of whatever it is they're using to create the music. And people want luxury. People want to feel comfortable when they're using software. So they want a great experience when they're using software, or when they're approaching software. So, a few examples. Well, an example. This is an iPhone app, an iOS app called Loopy. And I think my point here is that we're now going beyond the age of features, where products or pieces of work compete with each other in terms of what they can do. We're moving from the age of features into the age of user experience. So this iPhone app can do a lot less than the majority of desktop apps that do the same sort of thing. So it's a looping app. It's an app for doing audio loops. It can do, I could criticise it. I could say, well, why would I want to use that? Because I can't do anything with that I can't do in Ableton Live. Or I can't do anything with that I couldn't do in I couldn't do in Max. Well, I mean, how far do you take that argument? I couldn't do anything with that I couldn't write myself in C++ from scratch. That's no longer a valid criticism of software, because software isn't competing in those terms anymore. People are looking for things that make their experience more enjoyable and focus on the task that they want to do and deliver that and execute it in a beautiful way. Well, you might say, well, I'm a researcher, why do I care? Okay, the people who pay my wages pay me to do research, and I only develop software just to get my research ideas out. Okay? But I don't really buy that. I think if you're making software, you're a designer whether you like it or not. And if you're making software as part of your research process, then the software that you produce is going to mediate your research. The software is the lens through which the outside world views your research. Okay? And if that lens is out of focus, then your research is out of focus. And the user experience differentiates research. Okay, so there's lots of people, there's lots of great talented researchers all over the world doing similar things to you. Okay, your research probably isn't completely unique. And there's probably someone somewhere in the world who's better at doing the thing that you do than you are. So if you want to compete, then you need something to differentiate what you're doing. And providing good user experience is a way to do that. And then, finally, if we're all working in academic research in the UK at the moment, this word will be in a lot of conversations people are having. Impact. Researchers are being asked to deliver it. Okay? Currently, in the current ref, 20% of the value of the ref submission is in what's called impact, which is the effect that our research has on society. This is likely to go up. Research councils in their funding criteria are requiring impact to be written into bids. Delivering software, but also delivering software that has great user experience associated with it, is a good way to deliver impact. Okay, scientists. I'm not one, but as scientists we're probably going to want to know, how do we measure that? And that's really beyond the scope of this talk, but I think if you Google user experience and metrics, there's lots of ways to actually do that. But the thing is, the things I've talked about here today are quite fuzzy. They're not easy to pin down. So whilst there are metrics, I also advise a sort of common sense approach. Quick case study. This was the first. I tried to think of an academic-based software project that was to do with what I do, and PD is one of the most well-known ones. Although it's a community project and it's got a wide pool of contributors, it is still primarily developed by Miller Puckett, who was originally based at Earcam. This is the web portal for Pure Data, so it's part of the user experience of using Pure Data. Okay, first thing, where's the initial call to action? If I want to download Pure Data, where do I go? There's a download panel over there, but there's also a thing that says downloads over there. And then there's loads of text. So what does this tell me about Pure Data? It's a piece of software for people who like reading lots of text. And there's lots of confusing panels all over the place. So it tells me it's probably quite complicated. There's two versions of it, PD Extended and Pure Data. What's PD Extended? What's the difference between those? Which one do I download? What's this? Next random previous list. I don't know. Search box. Recent changes. So lots of stuff going on. And it doesn't look visually harmonious either. Compare that to the Ableton site. What's that trying to tell us? It tells us this isn't even this picture doesn't even show their main product, Ableton Live. This is a new product which they're bringing out called Push. It shows a human hand interacting with a control. So it tells me Ableton is a company that's all about interaction and control and creation. And it says from sounds to songs. So it tells me this is something where I can make sounds. And I can use that to make songs. It's very simple. Arrow tells me there might be some more information if I want it. Try live for free. So it doesn't say download, it says try live for free. Now, that's not very complicated, but it's had some thought put into it. It's not creating a sort of a web presence or a web portal for your software. It takes a lot of work, but the work should be in thinking about the design of it and what it says to your users. There's not complicated HTML coding and CSS going on there, or database backend. Well, there probably is, but you could do it without that. So, final thoughts. I don't think delivering great user experience is something that we as researchers and developers are going to be able to just do on our own. We don't have the resources. Even if we're really good at what we do, it takes a lot of time and effort to deliver this. So if we want to be serious about this, it needs to be something that's led from the management of research within universities, and it needs to be something that's bought into by management of research. And I also think that we should try and put this on the agenda of funders, so that as well as an impact statement, or built into the impact statement of funding bids, there's an experience or user experience component to that which is required, so that people, or at least encouraged, so that we can, in confidence, apply for funding to do user experience work and design work in our research projects. So that's my thought to throw out there, that this should be something that's funded. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got time for one quick question, and yours was the first hand up.
I totally agree on the need for a very good design language, and the products really need to be designed. But is there also a danger though that you end up favouring style of the content? There's a particular case in point with the Ableton front page. It was nice, clear, and cut layout. However, you've got a box at the bottom that was a picture of raindrops, a picture that was of a representation of a signal, and you're kind of back to violating rules about mystery meat navigation and so on. And I think with the prevalence of iPhone apps, there's no shortage of people who are able to make very whizzy looking apps, but sometimes the content of what's there can be lacking.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it's important to consider user experience as something which affects all types of software, not just, I mean, the ones I've shown you there are kind of UI-based software, but I mean, user experience affects command line tools, for example, and the considerations there are things like, does the command line tool give you help about the tool if you just execute the command instead of giving you nothing? Does it have a man page that goes with it so you can find out information about how to use it? So, or, if your stuff's on GitHub, is it easy to compile? Does it claim to be cross-platform? If it is, does it really compile on all platforms? So, I mean, I used UI-based stuff there as examples, but I don't see UX as something that's specific to GUI-based software. I think it's something we should have in our heads, whatever our software is, basically.
Okay. Thanks very much again, Nick.